What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Random Album Reviews. This is the segment on my channel where in my 1500 record vinyl collection that I spin a random wheel, get a letter, choose an artist, and talk to you about that album in great detail. And so as per usual, I've got the wheel up on the screen now, and it's spinning, and we are going to find out which letter we are picking today. And from the looks of it, we are going to get the letter N. So I am going to head out to my record collection, grab an album, come back and talk about it today. So I'm back. I had the perfect album for today. This is an album that means a lot to me, an album that I think is perfectly put together, and one that I'm sure, even if you haven't listened to before, that you've probably heard of in passing. And that is the album In the Aeroplane Over the Sea from the band Neutral Milk Hotel. And this is just a standard black vinyl. And this is an album that throughout the years, my appreciation for it has grown and grown and grown. My initial introduction to the record was through the track In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. And it's an album that I can only describe to you as an experience. The themes that are conveyed in this record have been picked apart for years and years by a multitude of critics. People have discussed, is this solely about Anne Frank or World War II? Is this a coming of age album? Is it an album about, sexuality? All of these different ideas that are conveyed throughout the record. And I think all of them are interesting to explore. But at the surface level, I think what's the most fascinating about this record is it is just an experience. Listening to this, it's such a unique style of music and the approach to the instrumentation. There's such a simplicity to how everything's presented, but there's also a complexity to the layer of instruments that are utilized and the number of sounds that you get throughout the record. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that with you today. So Neutral Milk Hotel is led up by frontman Jeff Mangum, and they are notorious because their career was incredibly short-lived. They didn't release a whole lot of music. This and On Avery Island were their two really main records, and they toured for a little while, and then they just kind of disappeared and didn't do anything. Several years ago, they came back, and I can't remember if it was just Jeff Mangum. I think it might have just been him doing a tour on his own. But what's interesting is Neutral Milk Hotel, despite the small amount of music that they released, the music that they have released has become so incredibly influential to a ton of bands over time. And I remember constantly growing up seeing this album cover and not really knowing what the sound I would expect is from it or what like the record was going to be like. And listening to it the very first time, I never would have expected it to be structured in the way that it is or sound the way that it is. Jeff Mangum has a very unique voice. It's not traditionally what you would think is like, this is a beautiful singing voice. He sings with a very raw, realistic passion that just comes through in such a visceral, kind of guttural way. Every lyric that he sings, especially when like he's singing very loudly, it just cuts directly into your soul. Like you feel like he really is believing every single line that he's delivering in each and every one of these tracks, which is one of the things that I feel like makes this record so incredibly special. It's also like really surreal. Some of the lines of dialogue in this are just like so strange and out of left field, but they paint such a vivid image in your brain. And I love that about this record. There's so many distinct moments I could pick out on multiple songs, especially something like "Oh Comely." There's a couple of lines in that song that are just so very strange and abstract. I think it paints a picture that's very in line with what he's trying to explore thematically on the record. And even like "Communist Daughter," like the very simplistic lyrics in that track, it's like a very like you hear it and you're like, what is he talking about? But when you think about it in the larger context of all of the themes that the record is trying to explore, it makes a lot of sense. And I love where this record goes because I think like despite me saying at the beginning there's so many different ideas that are being conveyed here, I think that it's all correlated because a lot of this I feel like is very coming of age and like the certain things you experience, especially when it comes to like religion. There's a lot of themes on this record talking about religion. I remember the very first time that I ever heard Two-Headed Boy Part 2, which is the closing track on the record. And the very first time I ever heard that, as someone who has, I've discussed this with you guys multiple times, I grew up in the church. I was raised to believe that, like, that form of belief system is the only way you could operate. Anything else that you do in your life is going to be wrong. And now I'm not a part of the church. I don't affiliate with that. And through my 20s was really when that whole kind of shift happened. And this album was a big part of in my early to mid 20s. And it was a big part of shaping kind of the musical taste that I have now. And I remember the very first time I heard Two-Headed Boy Part 2, and when I heard Jeff Mangum sing God is a place you will wait for the rest of your life, like that, it shook me to my core the first time that I heard that lyric. I was just like, how can someone convey something so incredibly powerful in a way that is like it's one sentence, but like in context with the remainder of the song, just like hitting you in such like an uncomfortable way, because that is what religion is. You sit and you wait and you hope that it's going to be real, but you could wait and it could all be for nothing. And I think that like conveying it in such a powerful way with simply one line is amazing. And Jeff is truly, he's a wordsmith. He knows how to paint really visceral imagery with his lyricism in a way that makes you as the listener have to be very intentional on how you're listening to these songs. Sometimes there's a straightforward message in a song, like if you listen to something like Holland 1945, what he's trying to accomplish here. I feel like it's much more straightforward than a lot of the tracks on the album, or Ghost, which is very much a song that you can see painted in line with Anne Frank and what was going on during the Holocaust. But then you have more abstract tracks on the record that I feel like are painting a picture in a very different way, but that somehow aligns to what Jeff is going for thematically the entire record. And that's something that I really love, is just the approach to songwriting and how the album is structured, because so much of the music is acoustically guitar driven, and it's not like the riffs on the acoustic guitar are incredibly complex, but it's the types of instruments that are layered. Like there's horns and strings and all different things incorporated on this record, and some soundscapes that I feel like you don't hear much on albums anymore. Which is one of the things that I really appreciate about Neutral Milk Hotel as a group, is they really created a soundscape that I haven't heard much else in my life. There's another band that I really love that came around years later, Me Without You, that's a spoken word band. Approaches song stylistically on some of their records similarly to Neutral Milk Hotel, but I feel like this style is something that you don't get very often, and it's one of the things that I really love about this record. And I think that it's incredibly moving. There's so much on this album that is really moving and thoughtful and visceral, and really just the showcase of an incredible talent. And Jeff obviously hasn't done a ton throughout his musical career, but I feel like what he has done has made an incredible impact. And I don't think a lot of like indie rock or folk rock would have been the same post this record. Like so many artists have tried to approach songwriting in a way that's similar to what Jeff did in his career. And I just think that this is an album for the ages. It's one that I think about nonstop. It's one that I recommend to a ton of people because I think it's such a pivotal album and there's so much to appreciate about it. And like I could have made a 30-minute video analyzing each and every track on this and kind of talking about my interpretations, but I just wanted to give you a very streamlined idea of what you're getting into when you're listening to this record. And I think, like, I don't know what all you guys' music tastes are, but I think that it's always important as a lover of music. I like to listen to things of all genres and styles, and it's important to try music from all genres and styles. And this is a record that no matter what you listen to, I think you should listen to it at least once. So have you heard Neutral Milk Hotels and the Aeroplane Over the Sea? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I think this record is brilliant. It's one of the greatest albums of all time, and it's an album I will recommend to virtually everyone. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.